Hey, what's up, everyone? So the dot cap in Path of Exile is something that I see people comment on all the time, Reddit, YouTube comments. I think it's something that people don't fully understand, and many people haven't fully thought through all of the implications on what it actually means in the game. So I wanted to kind of dispel some of those rumors and go over it in maybe more detail than you're looking for, but hopefully you'll learn something that you find kind of interesting from this video. So let's start off. What is the dot cap and why is the dot cap? Numbers in computers. If you know, if you've seen anything on the internet, you've seen some hackermans out there, you know that numbers on the computers are represented with bits. On early circuit boards, we basically use a set voltage to represent whether it is, in a digital system, whether it is a 1 or a 0 with the bits that we're transferring. Let's use a little nibble right here. So if you didn't know, a nibble is 4 bits. A byte is 8 bits. So you got 4 bits, you take a little nibble, you get 2 nibbles, and you get a byte. The way that we represent numbers here, so 0, 0, 0 equals 0. Each number represents a 2 to the power of. So this is 2 to the power of 0, 1, 2, and 3. So it represents 2 to the 0 is 1, 2 to the 1 is 2, 2 to the 3 is 4. And then we can add that up in combinations. This equals 1, this equals 2, and then this equals 3, so on and so forth, all the way down here until we get 15. So we get 16 different combinations from 4 bits. Pretty handy. However, if we want to get into negatives, we need to use one of those bits to represent the negative number. This cuts our potential possibilities in half. So we go from 16 combinations down to 8 combinations. Look up 2's complement if you want to know how it's actually implemented on in real computers. We're going to simplify right now. So if this is negative, then if we start here, this is -0. And this is why we use 2's complement, because we get one more number back. And then we can go all the way up until this, which equals -7. Because guess what? If we use this bit here and we're going up to this, we can only go up to +7, right? 4, 5, 6, 7. This bit no longer counts, so we can't use this 8-bit to count all the way up there. We still have 16 combinations, but now it's divided by 2 because one of those bits is taking up the space for the negative space. And you'll notice because we have a -0 right here, it's actually -1 from that. But in real implementations with 2's complement, we don't have to worry about that. There is no -0 in 2's complement. But this is just a simplification so you can understand it. Anyway, what does this mean for Path of Exile? For some reason, they chose to count damage over time that the monster takes. All of these words are very important. The damage taken by a monster from damage over time is capped at a 32-bit signed integer per minute. So a 32-bit signed integer, the maximum, or unsigned, right, would be 4.294 billion. But because it's signed, right, it's divided by 2. We lose that 1 bit, and it's actually 2.147 billion right here. And if we go to a calculator, you say, hey, that number doesn't make sense. I don't understand that number. If you go to POB, you'll see that 35.791 million is your .DPS cap. No matter what you do to go over that, that number will be capped out. Doesn't matter if you're doing 100 million, 100 billion damage per second. It'll cap at 35.791 million. Why is that number? It is the 32-bit signed integer that can cap out at 2.147 million positive or negative, or billion positive or negative, divided by 60. There you go, 35.791394 million. And that is the actual dot damage cap that a monster can take. And so that's the damage per minute is 2.147 billion is how much you can actually do per minute to a monster. And to know that in per second, divided by 60. Why they chose to calculate it per minute, I'm not sure exactly why. Maybe some sort of damage packing that they could smooth things out, make it more efficient in the early engine optimization. I think this number cap is probably a little long in the tooth and a little archaic at this point, but it's also possibly a little bit of a balancing factor for damage over time versus on-hit damage anyway. Because if Poison or Ignite had no dot cap whatsoever, I think they would be even more dominant than they already are in the game. That is the dot cap. It is what it is. However, there is a lot more nuance to it than what people usually say in a quick little Reddit comment saying, hey, I hit the dot cap, so I don't need any more damage. What else can I do? The most important thing is it's the actual amount of damage that a monster takes. If you are aware of how the damage works in this game, you get your base damage times all of your increases added up times each individual more multiplier. Damage taken happens after mitigation. If the monster has a less damage taken multiplier, that means that your dot cap is actually higher. So in the example of an Uber that has 70% less damage taken, so if we do 35.7 million divided by 0.3, because 70% less damage taken, our dot cap is actually 119 million damage per second. You can invest way more into damage, particularly if you're going to be fighting Ubers. Delirium can get up to 96% less damage taken right here to normal and magic monsters. This won't matter, but a rare monster can have 90% less damage taken. That means you can get 357 million damage over time as your dot cap against 100% deli rare monsters. And the other thing that I really want to emphasize here is realistic DPS. So for example, in my build right here, this is my Catswell channeling build. This is a T17 back to basics farmer. It is well over the poison dot cap. But important thing to note here is this is only in the perfect scenario. This dot cap of 30.79 million, this is when I've been standing inside the monster for a poison duration of 3.7 seconds. So I have to be inside the monster for a solid 1, 2, 3, done, right? I have to sit there for that long to hit that dot cap. What that means is the more damage that I do per poison stack that I apply, the faster I will hit my dot cap. And that's really, really important for the actual effective damage that you're going to do as you're mapping around. If, for example, right, you're just running, you're doing Forbidden Rite or Soul Rend or whatever, and there's just monsters on the edge, you want those monsters to die ASAP, right? If it requires you to hit 30 stacks of poison with 3.7 seconds of standing inside that monster, that's just not realistic for how you're actually going to be going through a map. You're going to have, 3 different rogue exiles on different corners of the screen, and you're just hitting them with a couple poisons per second. So there's that side of it, is how you apply, I have 12.5 max poison stacks right here. I have to get up to 12.5 poison stacks before I am at that damage cap. The other thing that I think matters a lot is the ramp time. And this is specifically poison, and I guess if you're doing Crimson Dance Bleed as well. Although you can apply those 8 stacks usually pretty quickly. The amount of time that it takes to ramp is very important. If you think about the way that the game actually works, is the bosses are teleporting around, they're going to go invulnerable, they're going to shed all of your poison stacks all the time. In realistic damage terms, we can just look at these numbers and focus on them. That is less important than actually how much damage you deal to the monster when you're able to deal the damage. Getting this poison duration, in general, if you can get that number as low as possible, you're going to get way better uptime of your effective damage. If you think of Cirrus or Shaper as they're teleporting around, are they going to sit there, particularly Cirrus? Is he going to sit there for a solid 3, 4, or 5 seconds to let you ramp? So if I add in Viper Strike right here and we show this has 11.9 seconds of poison duration. Whenever you see a POB, and especially if it's using Viper Strike, be very suspicious, because the way that Viper Strike works is it can scale many, many poisons because the poisons last so long. And in modern Path of Exile, so many bosses will go invulnerable, they'll teleport around, and you are just not going to sit there for nearly 12 seconds. And I think this is with my stuff turned on. Yeah, if I turn these off, it's actually all the way up to 15.8 seconds. So be very careful when you're making a build and pay attention to numbers like this, that you can kind of fixate on this full dot DPS and you can just get that number as high as possible. But this poison duration, you'll see that it's at 4.9 seconds right here. One of the highest quality of life that I could do for my build was getting faster poison right here with this mastery and the Watcher's Eye. This gives me 35% faster poisons. That goes all the way down to 3.71 seconds. My actual dot DPS, my full cap DPS, did not change whatsoever in POB, but the effective DPS for what it felt like in the game was night and day. And especially with something like poison, I think faster ailments is one of the hidden best mods that you can get for it, because the less time that you have to spend ramping, the more effective damage that you're going to get out, the more comfortable you're going to be being able to move from monster to monster and just getting your damage out. However, with Ignite, I would say it's pretty much the opposite of poison, whereas if you're actually at the dot cap, the most annoying thing is you just reapply that one Ignite. So the longer that Ignite can last, the less often you have to reapply it, because you just throw one trap out or one skill out, that monster is then ignited. And as long as you don't have to reapply it, that Ignite duration ticking for longer is actually more comfortable. So if I'm at the dot cap, I actually want that Ignite duration to be as long as possible, because I'm not sitting there trying to ramp up. I'm instantly at 100% damage, and then I have to reapply it every 2.38 seconds in this configuration right here. If you're looking at an Ignite POB, be wary if you see someone putting on, you can kind of do a little bit of fake DPS right here, where you can do a replica Ember Wake, which will give you a 90% reduced Ignite duration on enemies, but Ignites deal damage like 45% faster. So if you look at raw DPS for an Ignite, it can be a little deceptive in that way. Ignite duration, you have to be constantly reapplying it, so just be aware of that. If you don't have something that's attacking relatively quickly or is very comfortable, faster Ignite duration up until a point can be kind of uncomfortable. So the last thing I want to show you guys is how do you see what your actual DPS is. Unfortunately, in POB, it only shows your full dot DPS. I do wish there were a third line right there that said full uncapped dot DPS, but it is what it is. Maybe that's a thing that I'll think about adding in myself. All you have to do is, at the very least, if your build is not over Uber Pinnacle boss capped, you can just click on Uber Pinnacle boss right here. So you'll see my build here that is over capped. If I go to Uber Pinnacle boss, which is a 70% less damage multiplier effectively on my character, it goes down to 23.56 million Uber DPS, which is great. So a cool thing that I can do here, now that I know it's 70% less damage from the Uber, is I can take the full DPS number right here, divide it by 0.3, right? Because it's 70% less damage taken. And then I know that my actual full DPS is 78.53 million DPS. And this matters for any monster that has a less damage taken multiplier on it, specifically Ubers and Delirium. And then if you're even more capped than that, you can go back to Guardian Pinnacle boss right here, and I recommend just typing in 90% less damage. So if you type that into your custom modifiers right here, you'll see your number, you'll see full DPS, 7912918 times 10, 79.129 million. So right there, you can see our DPS as well, 90% less damage. You can calculate your actual damage that you're putting out. The numbers aren't exact here because I do have a noticeable amount of hit DPS that doesn't get scaled in the, in the full damage calculation. And then the very last thing that I want to say here is, how does your build work? Really think about how your build works, your positioning, what you have to do. Like I said, my Catswell channeling build, I have to stand in the middle of a monster for 3.7 seconds. Luckily, it's very, very tanky, so it doesn't really matter. It's super tanky. It can do that. How does your build work? Is it a lightning strike melee build that you have to stand exactly in the right position to be able to ramp your poison? Is it a full screen ignite that just a one pop so you don't have to worry about positioning or anything? Really try to understand that this is just a simulation of the game. POB is not perfect. It's just giving you a rough simulation. I think what really matters here is that your configuration is the same. You're just trying to figure out what this feels like in the game to the best of your ability, but you can't understand it. You can't test it properly until you're in the game fighting those monsters and understand what that ramp feels like. If my dot cap is at 12 poisons, but I can kill the monster at 6 poisons in half a second instead of waiting for the full ramp at 5 seconds, right? Think of what actually is happening when you're hitting your monster with an attack or a spell and what is going to happen when you kill them. So much of this nuance gets lost when we're just saying, hey, this number, this number. I think POB is a very, very important tool. I think it's incredible, and I'm glad that we have it. But as always, as we have things like effective hit pool, numbers kind of get jumbled. The understanding of what they actually mean and represent in the game gets lost, and I just want to add a little bit more nuance to the conversation. Hope you guys enjoyed this little computer science lesson and commentary on the way that poison and damage over time, specifically poison. I think it matters a lot for poison, but also ignite. Is bleed a thing? Chaos damage over time, is that a thing? I don't are they still in the game? No one told me. Huge thank you to all the patrons for supporting and encouraging me and giving me the ability to make videos like this. If you have anything else like this, like Leech, I'll probably have a Leech video at some point. Just putting it off because it's gonna be a hassle. If you have anything else, any topics like this that you think are not fully understood, maybe even EHP, I think effective hit pool could be a pretty cool video to make on as well, to really understand where that number comes from. And then you can link it to people and say, hey, this is how it actually works. And you get all these random Reddit and YouTube comments with people kind of spreading misinformation or partial information. I think it really muddies the waters for understanding how skills and builds and everything actually works and is applied in the game. Path of Building is just a simulation. It is not the game itself. And it's really important to understand both sides of the coin. Anyway, that's enough for me. Thanks for watching. I'll see y'all soon. Goodbye.